Okay, well with that, I'm going to turn it over to our distinguished panel of moderators here to talk to tonight's forum. So I did want to say a huge thank you to Dina Wright, Chico Vidal-Siva, and Noble Ray for agreeing to do this. I'm thrilled to have 3 community members with such stature coming and asking questions about where the city is going to go in the next 4 years and beyond. So with that, I'm going to turn it over.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. Good evening. Good evening. Okay, I'm going to explain our rules tonight. We're going to have a coin toss conducted, which will determine who starts the debate. So whoever wins the coin toss can decide if they want to go first or second in both the opening statements and the closing statements. Speaking of the opening statements, they will be limited to 3 minutes. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to give an opening statement. We will be asking 9 questions, so 3 of us each have 3 questions to ask. We will alternate which candidates answer first. So each candidate will get 2 minutes to answer the question, each, and then a 1-minute rebuttal from the candidate who answered the question first. Confusing, or you get it? Okay. Now the moderator may ask an additional follow-up question or 2. Closing statements, again, will be 3 minutes, and that too will be determined by the initial coin toss. We plan to be very, very strict timekeepers, guys, all right? So we're going to keep it limited to the times that I just mentioned. We will have someone in the front row. Is that, okay, there we go, timekeeper, official timekeeper there, and he'll let you know when you have 1 minute left.
Okay, I've got the magic quarter. So I'm going to stand and toss it. You would say which one's in the air? It is truly magic.
Yay!
Yes, it is.
First, last. It's a pleasure to be here with you, but let's get right to work. During the course of this campaign, you've heard me referred to as old, bland, tired, gray. Well, tonight we're going to find out who is old, tired, bland, gray, and progressive. I think that's most important of all the criteria. What I'd like to do is share with you a couple of experiences that your 2 candidates for mayor have had over the past 4 years, critical decisions that they had to make in terms of allocating resources for this community. When I came before you 4 years ago, I said that there were 2 critical missions, which I repeated throughout that campaign. The first, to solve the city's financial problems, which not only in and of themselves put us at risk, but secondly, would prevent us, if unattended, from dealing with the second challenge, the problems of poverty and equity in our community. My critics said that I didn't know what I was talking about, that in fact there were no troubled neighborhoods in Madison. Well, I went to work, didn't always have the cooperation of the city council, but I was determined to meet that commitment to you and the people of this city. Now, when and how did these things come up? Well, before we do that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to read you a quote. And I'm going to give you some choices. Rand Paul, Paul Soglin, Scott Walker, Scott Resnick. It's difficult to have innovation when you're talking about government regulation. It's nearly impossible to have those 2 in the same sentence. And before I go any further, please recall that intelligent, sensitive regulation is what made this state great. But as we get into the discussion, you've got one candidate here who insisted that we bring Uber in with its surge pricing, with its inability to control its drivers and to look out for the safety of the passengers and the public. You've got one candidate who voted for a $16.7 million amendment to the city budget for the Edgewater. Now there was an opulent luxury hotel. And you had another candidate who looked at the city reports that said all they need is $3.3 million. And it's important to recognize that if you spend that 16.7, it prevents you from having that borrowing capacity to go on and do neighborhood centers, community facilities. There was a choice in regards, we'll get to the others.
Let's talk about what's wrong with politics in our own party. Let's talk about what happens when you start getting attacked and associated, even in Paul's victory speech, to people like the Koch brothers and Scott Walker and Rand Paul. Let's talk about what that actually means for someone who is on the floor of the Capitol during Act 10. Let's talk about what that means to someone who's worked for Democrats, not when it's easy to work for Democrats, but when it's really hard. When you're going up, when it's the weekend before the election and you know there's going to be a race in 2012 that's decided by 86 votes, that's when it's about being a Democrat. And instead of talking about our progressive values, we try to associate, we try to divide and conquer. It's what's wrong with politics right now. And what I'll go further to say is what I'm tired of right now in the city of Madison is that we have homeless. Right now in our city, our homeless population has increased 41% in our last 4 years. And we're still picking blames and finding fights and making excuses. We take a look at what City Hall is like. When you walk into City Hall and the possessions are stacked high because we can't find the political will to find shelter for our individuals in our community. When we talk about the racial disparities in our city, time and time again, but we haven't found the political will to break down those barriers, to shred those silos. And what do? We point fingers, we make accusations, instead of holding ourselves responsible. We talk about collaboration, because in this time where our budgets are so thin, when we have so many bigger problems at the state capitol, when we know at no other time where we need to be working together, we decide to make political fights about this. We decide to make accusations. I am proud of my progressive record in working with my colleagues in the city council, in the county, our neighboring areas, and I'm proud of that record, which we will discuss tonight.
The first question tonight deals with affordable housing in the city. Lack of affordable housing in Madison is a persistent problem, with a third of renters paying more than 50% of their income towards rent, half of all renters paying a third of their income towards rent, and our local shelter serving more than 4,000 people annually. Affordable housing is desperately needed. What new plans, and I emphasize new plans, do you have to increase affordable housing in the city? Now, we all know that affordable housing, the term affordable housing, is relative. So we'd also like to know, how do you define affordable housing? And we'll start with Paul.
Let's be clear about something. No one in this city has done more to create affordable housing than I have. There are over 1,200 units throughout Madison that have been created and built during the tenure of my being mayor. Now, in terms of new, let's move to the future. You have before you this year's budget, the first of 5 years, a commitment of close to $25 million to create new housing, affordable housing, which is incomes anywhere from $42,500 down to zero. It covers the homeless who have relatively low income. It covers working families. but there are many ways of tackling the problem. When I came into office, Madison had the worst vacancy rate in the United States, 1.25%. We've built now close to 5,000 new units. They're not for everyone. Some of them are luxury, some of them are affordable, but by adding to that housing stock, we've doubled the vacancy rate, and we've got a ways to go. We want to get to 5% vacancy, which is a balanced market. We're utilizing WIDA tax credits. We've got 5 proposals before the state right now. Hopefully 2 or 3 of those will be selected. But before I came into the office, the city was not collaborating and cooperating with housing developers to site and plan affordable housing. That is a significant and a new change. I want to make a point about TIF District 25. The city of Madison should not close it out early. There is a new state statute which allows us to do 2 things. One, extend the life of the district a year, and secondly, use that money anywhere in the city, not just in the district, to create affordable housing. That's close to $5 million. I'm sorry, I do not see the logic of closing it out early, as Alderman Resnick advocates, and giving up on that kind of capital to create the housing. To support the housing, we can't do it alone. We are going to need cooperation from those who provide transportation services, quality child care, health care, and most of all, job training and educational support. With your encouragement, with collaboration with nonprofits and with builders, we can tackle this problem. And I can assure you that we will meet the goals in the first year of eliminating veterans homelessness and chronic homelessness, and during the course of these 5 years, create 1,000 new units.
Can I ask you to just briefly define for me affordable housing? When you say affordable housing, what do you mean?
Affordable housing is for any income from 0 up to $42,500 a year.
When more than 30% of your income is going to your housing, to make sure that you have a roof over your head, that's where we start talking about the definitions of affordable housing. And it's not that we don't support affordable housing, and the mayor and I will both agree that affordable housing is important. But it's how are we going to pay for it long term? We talk about the WIDA tax credits. And in many ways, take a look at what Governor Scott Walker is doing to cap different programs that the state's putting forward. Take a look at how we now need to combine our authorities for housing with our economic development agencies, because that's worked so well in the past. So if we're going to have a good plan, a strong plan for affordable housing, we need to be able to pay for it. Now, when we first start talking about the vacancy rates, one of the things to remember is a form of trickle-down economics that if we create luxury units, it doesn't mean it opens up luxury units for everybody. It doesn't mean that the entire system works out now that these units become affordable. We're building too much at the highest end. We need to be looking at new ways to pay for that. So let's take a look at what other communities do. And when we see buildings that are being destroyed and replaced for affordable housing units, let's see if the developers, and put together policies to say that the developers should also bear in that burden of helping us pay for future affordable housing units. Let's take a look at when new luxury units come online, that we can put together a tax and an additional incentive for developers, making sure that they're paying for the future of our affordable housing. These are new progressive ideas that make sure that everybody benefits in housing units that go on. We also need to look at where in the course of these developments, through our plan commission and through our zoning, where we can encourage developers to think about all those other decisions. Whether it's a bus shelter that's outside of a new property unit, whether it's on the outskirts of town and thinking about what does that do to city services outside of the city. When you look at areas that should encourage bus transportation, how do you make sure that the developer is in the game for the long term to make sure that we have equity development throughout the entire community?
And Mayor Southland, did you have a rebuttal?
Yes. First of all, I don't know where to start. Scott asked rhetorically that we need to pay for it. And did you hear an answer? And I really don't want to live the 2003 election all over again. Inclusionary zoning is illegal. We tried it for 3 years. The courts ruled against the city. You cannot impose these requirements on a private builder. You can if you do provide financial support, and we already do that. We do get allocations of affordable units in those where they get, for example, TIF assistance. As to how to pay for it, would you please read the housing report that came out this past year? It contains a 60-page document as to how we pay for it.
I was going to ask what the capital city of Togo was, but you know the answer. Anybody knows the answer? Good. So with that, we'll move to the homeless rates in the city of Madison, which continue to rise. What specific steps will you take to address homelessness in the city? And I would like to also for you to specifically answer how you will go about getting a comprehensive, accessible day resource center, and what will you do to make it happen?
A new emergency shelter for men, 24-hour service, being able to provide the care that individuals need, both with therapy, housing resources, substance abuse, all need to be under one roof and inside our central isthmus. Now, we're not going to be able to do this alone. We need to be able to work alongside our partners, both in the county board of supervisors and the county executive's office. We need to be working alongside our philanthropic partners. We need to be working alongside our business community, because we have issues in our community. We need an approach that's collaborative. We need to be talking about this in a calm manner, because these are situations that really talk about the way of life for many individuals. Individuals that feel like they're in fear every single day. We talk about the reason why individuals are sleeping outside in front of our city hall. Very often it's individuals who haven't found a home inside our current shelter system. It's individuals who have partners that otherwise can't find somewhere to go. It's individuals who have issues with mental illness. Individuals who simply are claustrophobic. When we have a collaborative approach, when we bring all of the partners to the table, we can start to talk about realistic solutions for these issues at hand, but it's not going to come back unless all of the partners are at the table.
To deal with this issue, we really have to understand its origin and the failures to deal with the origin of the problem. If you go back to the 1980s, we did not have this problem in Madison and in Dane County. If we did, the numbers were so small that it wasn't as certainly visible as it is today, and the growing number of homeless over the last 2 decades pretty well demonstrates that. What happened is the state of Wisconsin and the federal government made changes in terms of the deinstitutionalization, particularly of mentally ill people, and the treatment of individuals with substance abuse problems. That ended up throwing thousands of people out into the streets. So one of the first things we need is a discharge policy, that no one is discharged from a prison, from a jail, from a treatment center, unless accommodation is made for housing. Secondly, People ought to have a little pride in their own communities. And we should not have police departments from communities in Dane County driving individuals from their communities onto West Washington Avenue and leaving them unannounced on our doorstep. Or for that matter, Black River Falls, which to me is very poignant, because when that happened, the individual went around wandering Madison and set 3 homes on fire before our police and fire departments were able to intervene. The city of Madison alone does not have the capacity to address this problem. That's the first point. The second point, it is documented from the work in Salt Lake City and in Phoenix that there is only one workable solution, and that is housing first. That means getting people into permanent housing and then dealing with these other issues. Now, in terms of the day shelter, the county has taken the lead on this, and I'm not going to go into the details of what went wrong, but clearly there was bad communication with both the city of Madison and the town of Madison, and that has left us in our present circumstance. I've got enough problems and challenges running the city of Madison. While I've got some opinions about how to run Dane County, I'm not going to try it.
Alder Resnick, would you like to give your thoughts?
Ronald Reagan was elected. He had policies that we don't agree with, and we still are facing the same challenges that we did in the 1990s. We had our Economic Development Division take a look at where individuals who are homeless originate from. And it wasn't outside of Dane County. Many of the individuals are from right here in our own community. So when we talk about these issues, and we try to place so much blame on everyone else, we need to take a look in the mirror. Because the hard truth of this is there are many individuals who are right here from the city of Madison who didn't find the right resources while they were here, that missed out on the programs that we're talking about, and unfortunately still live in our streets.
So I have a follow-up question because I'm not sure that I got a yes or no answer on the commitment to the Comprehensive Accessible Day Resource Center. So would you commit city resources and political power to see a Comprehensive Accessible Day Resource Center open in the next year?
I will commit the resources of the city to finding a site, and we were perfectly fine with the site on Lean Road. I will not commit the people of Madison's tax dollars to pay double to support the center. We've got to understand we are not 50-50 partners with the county. We are part of Dane County. We are entitled to the services of Dane County as much as the folks in the town of Dane, in the town of Madison, in Shorewood, in Maple Bluff. When those communities start paying 50% of the bill, I'd be willing to consider it. But we are not going to pay twice. We have got other obligations. We're taking care of Overture. We've got this enormous park system. And we've got the day-to-day challenge of dealing with the greatest amount of poverty outside of the town of Madison in Dane County.
The answer is yes. Because we can no longer make excuses. Because the same issues that are going on in Dane County are going on in Madison. And if we don't treat our partners as true partners, we're never going to see the kind of collaboration that we dream of. We're all Democrats at the end of the day. We need to be working together on solving our issues of poverty, of homelessness, and unless we're working together, and stop the bickering back and forth on 50-50, we're not going to see solutions.
Okay, continuing with that theme of city-county cooperation. Or lack thereof. The next question is, and I believe it's Paul first on this one. The next question is, name 2 areas that the city and the county have had historic conflicts over, and name at least one specific step you would take to work collaboratively with Dane County.
Well, I wouldn't know if it's historic, but it certainly goes back to the 1980s, and that's the challenges of dispatch. We've got some real challenges, and what you just mentioned, we had another fire this morning, and it occurred again today. We have very different views on how emergency personnel should be dispatched. Police and fire, ambulance rescue. We think it's very critical to dispatch as soon as possible. We also think it's critical to understand that it is not necessarily the best thing to call out the nearest engine. For example, in a fire. An engine company that's further away may be a more reasonable solution if they don't have to wait for volunteers to show up. Or if the first company is an incomplete company, not sending a full complement of firefighters. Now, the county has decided to take control of this unilaterally. It has the right to under the law. We've offered suggestions. We have asked for a seat at the table. And we don't believe that the present configuration of resolving this question, where we are basically the customer, has been satisfactorily dealt with. I rely principally on the city's police chiefs and fire chiefs for advice on how to handle this. And when they were frustrated with the response they got from county government, out of obligation to you, deeply concerned that on our watch, that there not be a fatal error, I insisted upon public discussion of this matter. Now, you're asking for a second area. The issue of the challenges of the mentally ill. Please understand that we are different silos in terms of revenues and expenses. And who saves money in one area or another may not be the same unit of government. But probably close to 60, if not 70% of Madison's police and fire budget is related to people with substance abuse and alcohol abuse problems, if they're not already compounded with mental illness. The county is the principal party responsible for these services in Dane County. We, as the city, will probably realize the greatest savings if proper steps were taken to address the needs of those who have issues with mental wellness and substance abuse.
Paul, I did not hear a step that you were going to take to work more cooperatively.
How about continuing the discussions that we tried in both of these areas? But if that doesn't work, let's be realistic about it. This is not an insider's game. It's one that is a concern to 500,000 people in Madison and Dane County, and the next step is to get you engaged in the discussion.
So a previous mayor was joking with me that you'll have a honeymoon period with any county executive. You'll have a great maybe 1-2 years, and then you're going to find something to fight about. So no matter what we look at, whether it's the issues of homelessness, whether we look at issues of who gets appointed to boards and commissions, how the public health department is managed, there's going to be interactions between the county executive and the mayor's office. The improvement, though, and we saw this with the 911 center, is I will make sure that the county executive is never blindsided by a statement that I'm going to make publicly. I am going to ensure that no matter what, we always treat each other with respect. I'll never walk into the county executive's office to go yell, to go stomp, to go treat that individual with disrespect. Because the reality is, we're all in it together. The mayor's office and the county executive's office is 100 feet away. We have seen mayors and county executives go to court, fighting different battles. And I'm here to say, I'm here to fight for the city of Madison. But if it's the taxpayer resources, we're not doing it right. Now, when it comes down to the 911 center, we talk a lot about order dropping, we talk a lot about the technology issues, and yes, previous county executives could have done more. We could have looked at how the budgeting is covered, how the technology solutions, when someone calls 911, is not meeting our demands right now, and it's not meeting anybody in the county's demands. But what it takes is accountability on these factors. It means working together to find solutions. Because if we're working against one another, it puts everybody's lives in jeopardy.
I absolutely deny that I ever went into the county executive's office and stomped my feet or yelled. In fact, I'm rather cordial in those visits, whether we're meeting over car seat or 911. And I always make sure there's a witness. When the issue of the 911 center came up, there was no blindsiding. Let's understand that. There had been multiple discussions between police and fire officials, followed by multiple discussions by me. And when that got no result except waving in front of us a piece of paper saying that the 911 center had won 6 certificates for being the best in the country, which turns out you buy from the company that outfitted the center, I said enough is enough.
So next question, changing a bit the subject. Madison sits atop a whole bunch of best of lists, like today's livability list, but for many Madisonians, the tale of two cities is a stark reality. Racial disparities have plagued our city for decades. In fact, we're home to some of the worst racial disparities in the country. The statistics are real with long-term consequences. Could you tell us 3 new policies, 3 and new being the key words here, policies you would implement to address racial disparities?
So thank you, Shiva. And to see what the issues that we still have in the city of Madison, the tale of two cities, these issues can be completely undeniable. We take a look at what we can do in the city of Madison and working alongside the county executive in the ways that he's now bringing forward issues to the community. So let's talk about them. First, let's take new measures in the form of childcare. What we know from our community leaders and researchers at the university, that if you enter the school on a same equal playing foot, you'll have a better chance of success when you're leaving the school. So ensuring that we're having new daycares that are opening, seed funding available for new daycares, ensuring that we have additional scholarships for students who need affordable childcare. Second, it's taking down the barriers. And when I say barriers, it's for any community event. When we look at the demographics inside a room where we only see Caucasians, affluent individuals showing up for our community events, we're not doing enough to eliminate barriers. Because we take a look at how many people in Madison's downtown and our business leaders travel to South Madison. How many business leaders go to the north side of town? We need to be looking at improvements throughout that, no matter what the excuse is. And we need to be talking seriously about jobs programs, not just for youth, but thinking about the entire community. How do we think and attract those employers who are including individuals, who are investing in jobs that have an open array of opportunities and career paths throughout an entire system, and thinking strongly about embracing those leaders as progressive business owners and encouraging them into our community.
I've done a bit of traveling at your expense over the last 4 years, and it's given me the opportunity to visit such glamorous places as Dayton, Ohio, Louisville, and in the course of that I've had the honor of being the recipient of a number of presentations on how to deal with these issues, and I've had the opportunity to talk with mayors who have successfully done it. There's one thing that's very clear. It makes a difference when the mayor comes forward to the private sector and basically does the ask. And so we put that into practice. And the first thing we did is we implemented a summer youth job program a year ago. We named it after Wanda Fulmer. Many of you are aware of the program. Scott here ridiculed it because all we did was take it from 25 total students to 25 within the city itself and another 125 or so in the private sector. And then after he ridiculed it, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. We saw a $300,000 grant from the Renabaum Foundation, which is now committed to 650 more jobs. And that's over the next 2 years in cooperation with a half a dozen private employers. Then, for the adults, we went out and met with United Way, and what do you have? You now got the HIRE program. How many people in this room know about HIRE? Less than 5%. HIRE is a $1 million commitment, which includes some of your tax dollars, to hire 200 adults to sustainable career-oriented jobs in the next 2 years. But that's not enough. I took the lead and we went out and we did a disparity study to see what was happening with African American, Latino, women-owned businesses. And there's going to be 2 more initiatives coming out, brand new. First, we are going to create a council of at least a half a dozen, if not a dozen, of the African American, Latino, and women-owned businesses in the contracting and building trades, and work with them methodically to see why they are getting better contracts in Milwaukee than in Madison. Simultaneously, is there anybody here working for any of the major contractors? Because you're going to get called. We are going to bring in the major contractors, and we are not only going to ask them why we don't have retention of African American and Latino and women in the trades job, because the unions are doing a good job in terms of the recruitment, but not retention, but also why they're not using the same subs, Latino, African American, and women on these major contracts they're getting within our community.
Let's talk about the disparity study. And one of the issues that I had as a city council member who approved that disparity study is when we approved it for January of 2013, why we had to reauthorize it. Why it took us over at least a year to get that study even started, $1 spent to kick that project off, is because we took time. Maybe we should be looking at these benefits right now instead of talking about them during your next term. Now, when I was ridiculing you on the jobs program, the reality was 25 jobs. As someone in the small business community, as someone who runs an organization called Capital Entrepreneurs, no one reached out to us. It actually took the Urban League to take that next step to make sure that we were ensuring that we had jobs in our community and created some phenomenal programs with the YWCA. So there's so much more that we can do, but let's not say we communicated to the entire business community.
There have been spirited exchanges between the Young, Gifted, and Black Coalition and Madison Police Chief Mike Koval. Do you agree with the Young, Gifted, and Black's assessment and demands? Is the first question. And the second part of that is, how would you improve on Chief Cobalt's response to their demands, or do you think that his response was satisfactory?
We are not going to stop having patrols in all neighborhoods of the city. We are not going to honor the request to eliminate our community policing program. Let's understand that. And let's understand where the arrests are being made. They are not being made in these residential neighborhoods. We did an analysis. We did an analysis of where are the hot spots in terms of those at the age of 26 and under being arrested. 4 high schools, 4 bus transfer points, and 4 discount big box or mall stores. Those are the 12 spots where they're being arrested. Now, when you take the home addresses of those arrested and plot them, they come down to about a half a dozen very tight neighborhoods within the city. But that is not where the arrests are taking place. Now, why are they arrested? The arrests are taking place for a number of reasons. One has to do with fighting, particularly at school or at the bus transfer points, and at shopping centers, which is where the mall arrests take place. But what happens to those kids who are arrested? And this is where the system breaks down. The white kids who get arrested get the opportunity, because of family resources, to get into divergence programs. And they basically are able to, one, escape the judicial system, and secondly, are then less likely to be repeaters. The African American kids, a lot of the Latino kids don't have those resources. That is why we have implemented a change in the South District, headed by Captain Ballas, where we now have a peer group court. We're working also with municipal judge Koval in terms of divergence from the judicial system. And going back to the county exec's recent pronouncements on the subject, let me point out that most of those are already being done within the city. I can't speak for communities outside the city. But it's very important to understand that the city of Madison is not the town of Madison. And so when we talk about everything from social services and justice to the challenges of economic development, we should talk about this some more.
Paul isn't listening to the overall message being held by the YBG. There are demands in the community, and there's a serious issue. When disparity rates in our city are seeing 8-to-1 ratios, this is why we have peers, and my peers are sitting and protesting. This is the reason why we have institutional issues, institutional and structural issues that people are struggling with every single day in our community. It's why people are protesting. So listen to the demands on their list. I can't agree with each single one, but there's a reason why we're having this conversation. And to answer the question about Chief Koval's tenure, or Chief Koval's tone in his emails, he's being honest. He doesn't care about the political ramifications. He's giving his honest opinion. And those who are having the discussion on the other side are being honest with their feelings and emotions too. And when I see progress being made, it's because we're having an honest conversation and trying to figure out together where we go. Because there are certainly issues in this community, and we need to be working alongside everybody if we're going to see progress.
There's one follow-up question to this. Given that the arrest rate shows that black people are 8 times more likely to be arrested than white people, What specific things will you do to foster community discussion and perhaps come up with solutions to this disparity problem?
Well, let's first build off identifying the problem properly, which is where the arrests are made. Secondly, let's focus on what's happening in the judicial system, which is not doing a good job in terms of preventing recidivism. Now, the Madison Police Department has a number of programs in place which are designed to address some of these issues. One of which I mentioned, which is the Southside Restorative Court. There is a couple of programs in combination with Madison Urban Ministry. There are several programs designed to work with motor vehicle violations. But the key to this is education, job training, jobs, and breaking a pattern that has existed for some time, not just in Madison, but throughout the United States. The challenge here is to come up with programs designed to deal with social justice and equity. I told you in 2011 that was the centerpiece of why I ran for mayor. Go back and look at Scott Resnick's record. Ask him what he implemented, what he brought about as a member of the council for those same 4 years, other than co-signing already existing programs or what others had introduced. Let's talk about what's on that list. Let's talk about our collaborative effort as part of the President's initiative on My Brother's Keeper, which we had already advanced through something called Cities United. I won't go into the details of it. I mentioned the Summer Youth Job Program. Out of school time, critical. What kids do after school on weekends and during the summer. That is one of the greatest areas of disparity in our community. You're middle class, you're white, you go to day camp, ballet lessons. Those are not available to a great deal of the young kids who are African American, Latino, and Asian. Well, food plays an important part. You've seen the initiative we've made in terms of getting food access to Ally Drive. And from there, we're hoping to take it elsewhere. Hungry kids don't learn. You can have all the mentoring, all the tutoring you want. Hungry kids during the summer are not on a trajectory for success. And that's another critical area that we have to address. But when you go about voting for a 50% increase for the city council, you are not putting aside the resources for this kind of programming. We have to understand these are building systems, and they are making a difference. I'm not ashamed of these fine rankings the city of Madison gets. I am challenged, as you are, to make sure that every Madisonian enjoys the benefits of living in our community. But what's really critical is that we build systems which we've been working on, and there are results. Are they satisfactory? No. But we've cut in from 2011. The disparity study is from 2011. The most recent data we have is 2013. We have cut into the unemployment. We have cut into the children living in poverty. In fact, if you go look at the school district records in terms of the children who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, the last 3 years is the first time that we have seen a plateau and a drop in kids in the Madison School District eligible for free and reduced lunch after it skyrocketed from 2000 to 2011. This is the kind of work that it takes. Specific programs that I've shared with you and which need our resources. Just simply saying we're going to do the programs without having the mechanism to pay for it is a hollow promise. It's not fair. But you've seen a change in city priorities. These plans are underway. It took us years to make a difference in the 1990s, but we closed those gaps in the 1990s.
Thank you so much.
Just repeat the same question. We were so far. What was the question? We were supposed to ask right there.
Oh, it was about the arrest rates. At 8, and the black people are arrested 8 times more frequently than white folks.
You see the presentation that some of you last month caught at Dane Dems, which reviewed what the community is doing, what the situation is right now in the community that leads to 8-to-1 arrest rate ratios. And there are many programs that the mayor spun off that, of course, we would keep in place. Many programs that predated the mayor in keeping alive. What I want to talk about, though, is how do we bring new voices to the table. And as we talk about the young, black, and gifted, and the community conversations that the sheriff is having with the organizations, that our police chief are having, true conversations, not just talking about the data and where youth are being arrested, but how we make incremental progress. Now, the mayor has done some good things on this issue. I'm not going to deny that. And I do believe that as a compassionate community, we're making progress. But when we look at issues and priorities in the city of Madison, when we're not collaborating and talking to the next generation of leaders that are working on this day in and day out, pushing the progress forward, we're not going to solve these solutions. We're not going to find the unique silver bullet. We need to actually go further than this. Does that answer the question for you, the panel? I'll tell you, this is a complex issue.
Okay. We're on to question number 6, and it is Scott Resnick that takes this one on first. The question reads as follows. Those of us who have had to get here tonight during rush hour using the Beltline this evening know all too well about how traffic is on the roadway. It's just like a parking lot at many times, going to work or, congestion, crashes, etc. So I have 3 questions related to transportation as it relates to this. And they are as follows. Are we succeeding or failing in dealing with car traffic pressures? Are we succeeding or failing in dealing with car traffic pressures? That's number 1. 2, are we succeeding or failing in creating sustainable transportation plan for the city? And then lastly, are we succeeding or failing with transportation related to all employment? Are we succeeding or failing with transportation related to all employment?
With the issues on the Beltline in so many ways, these are issues that are out of our control in the city of Madison. A lot of these pieces are due to issues at the state level that unfortunately decisions by the governor and DOT move forward with projects that I don't think we would agree with in an equitable way of transportation. But when it comes down to the car pressures downtown, it's figuring out how we can free up the isthmus. Now, I look at my wife and I, we're down to 1 car. It keeps our carbon footprint as low as possible, and it makes sure that we only have 1 vehicle traveling back and forth. It's trying to ensure other multimodal pieces of transportation because it's more sustainable. Trying to figure out how we can have a strong quality, bike-friendly community helps, because every vehicle that's off the road means it's not clogging up East Washington, Johnson Street, and our corridor throughout our downtown. When it comes to sustainable transportation measures, we cannot continue to rely on simply being a car-only city, and we have taken steps forward in planning for BRT, bus rapid transportation. And I'm excited about the steps we have worked forward on. But when it comes down to all employment, and when you hear the complaints of individuals in neighborhoods who are trying to use Metro to go back and forth, the complaints are still plentiful. We still have not solved the issue of if we're trying to go a drive that might take 10 minutes by car takes 45 minutes by Metro bus when you're waiting for the bus, we're not solving our issues. We still need to be looking for improvement. We need to be setting that great quality of excellence for our public transportation system, and I do believe we can reach it.
Just looks like a bright group, Democrats. How many of you are aware that the city's conducting a comprehensive transportation study right now? And how many are familiar with the bus rapid transit study? So I don't know if those are the same people, but together the two clusters of hands probably were at least a third of the room. We've got these two studies underway right now. And bottom line is, we have to go backwards. 1979, the city set a new record for bus ridership levels. In 2014, we broke it. Finally, going back to 79, we have set a new record for bus ridership levels. That's unacceptable. We should have set a new record long, long ago. The challenge for the city is to produce a transit system that is, we can't make it as efficient as the auto, but it's far more efficient than it is today. And bus rapid transit is part of that. With these new levels of ridership, yes, we are making progress, Chief, in regards to vehicle or modal split between the car, actually walking, taking the bus, and bicycles. In terms of our planning, I'm confident in what we are doing. The real challenge, this being Madison, is when the reports come out and we have to make tough choices. Are we prepared to deal with that? For bus rapid transit, you cannot have a bus stop on every corner. In some areas, it's going to have to be every other corner. There are going to have to be park and ride facilities, if not for bicycles or automobiles, on the perimeter of the metro area. It means we have to develop, get this, a regional transit authority. A month ago, I met with Robin Voss, who's the key member of the legislature in terms of stopping this legislation. And here I am a month later in front of you, and I'm still breathing. It also means, in terms of employment, that we cannot create any more Owl Creeks. We cannot develop isolated communities with no transit access, with no food, with no jobs. It's in our land use planning as much as our transportation planning. And I'm proud to say, standing firmly in front of the State Department of Transportation bulldozers and saying no to a Highway 51 expansion, Stoughton Road, but instead say, turn it into a garden parkway. Turn it into something that's habitable and that doesn't destroy 1/3 of the city of Madison.
So at a recent neighborhood meeting, a citizen indicated that the mayor and the common council focus too much on downtown Madison and lose sight of the other areas of the city. How would you respond to that comment? And what are your plans to provide that critical balance between downtown issues, neighborhood association issues, and neighborhood concerns like the increased gun and gang violence?
I think that's a valid criticism, especially in light of the tremendous investment that the city has made in State Street in the downtown, and now we're being populated by smoke shops and 7-Eleven stores, which if you're not aware of, you really want to get depressed. One is going in at the corner of State and Lake. I hope we will get city council cooperation to stop the plethora of these stores and liquor which is driving out the local businesses, the Paul's bookstores, the B-Cycle, the Telus Modern. What makes State Street so special to everyone, not just in Madison and Dane County, but throughout the state, visitors to our community. We've done a number of things recently, focusing on other neighborhoods. First, let me mention that we did our diligent best with the reconstruction of Johnson Street and Willie Street. I walked both streets during the construction periods, trying to bring attention to the retailers and trying to get focus. Sarah did her part by shopping on Willie Street and going to Vinnie's every Tuesday. Cottage Grove Road, we've got Royster Clark. Very exciting project. But we're taking it a step further. We're asking, what can we do from Monona Drive all the way past Stoughton Road to recreate and rebuild the street so it's got a walkable feeling, it's got the feeling of a Willie Street, of a Monroe Street. That's one of the things we're doing, and I'm very proud of the initiative, considering that I was the one who said to the staff, let's do more than Royster Clark. Let's look at all of Cottage Grove Road. Allied Drive. We worked through our NRTs to deal with the food issue, and so when word came of the Walgreens, there had already been discussions about what we might do to create a healthy food environment and a greater retail presence in the area. The same thing is true as we go further to the west, but I want to focus for a moment on the north and the challenges. We've put in the feed kitchen, but we've got, despite the benefits of Warner Park and the duck pond, we've got challenges with the shopping center. And we've got to get stronger retail, and again, we've got to get food in there. The city plan department is overtaxed and overworked. One of the things I've asked them to do for next year is to provide me with recommendations for additional staff so we can do more neighborhood planning. And by the way, speaking of neighborhoods, we've had 2 neighborhood conferences. Unfortunately, the council and I didn't get along on it. I wanted neighborhood conferences on specialized subjects every year. The council decided we should go every other year. But that's another thing that we can do in terms of placemaking, in terms of getting more involved in our city.
There's a valid point. And when we focus too much of our resources on our downtown and on our central isthmus, other people feel left out in the community. You take a look at not only TIF dollars, but other economic development that only goes on in our downtown. The amount of attention and planning that happens on a street like State Street, and although there's been a major investment, that same type of planning and effort isn't put in on the same in other areas of our community. We need to be having more listening sessions and more engagement throughout our entire city. Because when you look at an issue that occurs and it impacts a family on the Near East Side, and you see how many people show up for the community conversation at City Hall, and you have that same exact issue with the same complexities in the South Side, in the North Side, in the Far East Side, excluding a grocery store, you don't see the same kind of input that you would otherwise expect. It's figuring out new ways on how we engage residents in City Hall, looking at new ways where we're holding our meetings, how we're having our listening sessions. You know, I've been to meetings throughout our entire city. We had a meeting on accessible transportation on the South Side. No one showed up. We had the listening session on a Saturday. We promoted it through all of our traditional means, and apparently no one cared about accessible transportation. But I know that's not the truth. The city staff members who showed up to the meeting knew it wasn't the truth. The folks who brought the TV cameras for our award-winning public access knew it wasn't the truth. When we have issues, we need to figure out new ways to engage with our residents, whether that means new forms of technology to communicate, to better reach out to neighborhood leaders, to talk and make sure that everyone has access, those with smartphones or not, those individuals who are just residing in our community, because we need to make sure that we have a larger conversation here in the city of Madison.
Given the capital budget and debt service constraints, if elected, what would be your top 2 infrastructure priorities for next year, 2016 and 2017? So So what would be your top 2 infrastructure priorities for 2016 and 2017? And could you include in your response your thoughts on the Midtown Police Station? Should it be built? Why and why not?
So the top 2 issues for infrastructure improvement. First, we need to have a serious conversation about what intermodal transportation happens in the city of Madison, how we connect our city to all of our neighboring cities. We've been talking right now about the Lake Street ramp. I think that's a serious priority, but really what we need to be addressing is on East Washington right now, as we've engaged in so many more community conversations of what's going on in Central Park, all the fun and catalytic projects that are on the East Washington corridor. We need to immediately address the parking concerns and constraints that we now have for future generations. The other piece of it is the infrastructure of the internet. And it's talking about closing the digital divide, making sure that anyone in the city has access to the internet in an equitable way. So particularly starting at the way of with those who are on free and reduced lunch, making sure our children in the city of Madison have access to the internet and tools of the future. When you talk about Midtown the police station, I supported it. I listened to the advice of our police chiefs in conversation. I listened to the conversations that the alders who were presenting the case, who live inside the district, were making, because I truly believe it was their representative ability to represent their own district. So I said, let's move forward. Not 3 years from now, let's move forward today.
Can I ask you just a quick follow-up? You were talking about access to the internet.
Yes.
Access to the internet means nothing if you don't have a computer. Will you make sure that those folks also have access to a computer?
The digital divide has 3 important prongs to it. 1, which is access to the internet. 2 is the device. And 3 is the education to know how to use that device. All 3 pieces are part of the long-term solution.
It's the job of an elected official to make tough decisions. And let's go back, first of all, and talk about the Midtown Police Station. The Midtown Police Station, other than the administrative personnel for that station, will not produce any more police officers on the streets. Okay, we got that part understood. Secondly, in terms of convenience, what the Midtown Station does, and by the way, it's 2 blocks from my house. What the Midtown Station does is it changes the breakup of aldermanic districts and the overlay of police districts and makes it easier to follow, so certain alders won't have so many south and central, central and west, central, south and west reporting into their neighborhoods. In terms of the chief, the station was not requested for several more years. Now, if you're the police chief and a group of council members say, we want to move the station up, what do you think the police chief's going to say? Of course he said yes. But that wasn't his original recommendation. And as Chief Ray knows, when we enthusiastically bought the property, we had no intention of developing the station this soon. Doing that station does two things to our operating budget, to our budget. 1, to the capital budget. It deprives us of our ability to borrow for something else. And secondly, it consumes operating dollars, as energy efficient as it's going to be, and the staffing salaries for the 4 administrative personnel involved with the command. No, I would move back that station, and I would go ahead with our plans to purchase the Salvation Army facility at Darbo Worthington, next to the old American Family site on East Wash, which would then allow the Salvation Army to consolidate its services at one site and allow us to develop a community facility and hopefully an entrepreneurial food center for that neighborhood. Because the sooner we get that going, the sooner we're going to address all of these other issues. And the rest of the second project is Griff's, and getting the Griff's facility started, as it's designed to serve a whole segment of the southwest side, ages 16 to roughly 30, in terms of a job training center.
Scott, would you like a rebuttal? Okay.
Okay, we are getting to the end here of the debate. It's time now for your 3-minute closings. And Scott, you will go first.
I'll be very brief with this closing. I want to thank you all so much for your interest in the Madison mayor's race, to be here tonight and to share your time with us this evening. The reality is we have challenges in the city of Madison. This is no secret. We may take a look at livability rankings. We may say that right now we're a great place to live, but it's where we can go in the future, the decisions that we can make over the course of the next 4 years to put us on the great path for the next 40 years. We're not going to do that when we're fighting. We're not going to do that when there's arguments amongst members, not individual members, but entire blocks of the city council and the executive branch. We're not going to have that if we're fighting with our county executive. We're not going to see that happen if we're fighting with so many of our neighborhood partners and other folks who just want to offer new ideas. Because everyone needs to be at the table. Everyone needs to suggest the ideas that will make the city of Madison a great place for everyone to reside. And I truly believe we can be a prosperous and equitable community that takes down the barriers and addresses the major challenges that are up ahead. Thank you so much, and I would encourage you to vote on April 7th.
I came before you 4 years ago saying that we had a challenge dealing with poverty and equity. We went to work immediately in 2011, revitalizing the neighborhood resource teams. We're not done, and that's why I'm before you. But keep in mind that this is a job that demands specificity. It demands making tough choices in regards to allocation of resources. I didn't come in to be a potted palm. I came before you to tell you what I thought and to work with you in making Madison a better place for everyone. I am convinced that if we can be the #1 city in all these rankings, some of which even strain my credibility, the best place to retire, that we can make it for every single person. I'm so proud to have joined with other mayors on the question of immigration reform, put our city on the cutting edge in terms of recognizing the dignity of people and the fact that we should not waste the opportunity of a single adult or child in our school system, in our employment, and that the opportunities are not just in those sectors, but they're to have fun and to enjoy themselves. But I set a standard at the door, and everyone in the city, including the people in this room, had to honor that standard. It's not good enough to be an insider. I don't care if you're a political junkie insider. I don't care if you're one of the wealthiest developers in Madison and you're an insider. To get in the door, you have to agree to participate fairly with a commitment to social equity and justice. It means making tough decisions and occasionally offending people. It means saying that not every person serving on a city committee has to live in the 2nd and the 6th aldermanic districts. And for those of you who don't, please see us. We need more diversity. But we need that diversity and we work at it in regards to city committee appointments. No longer appointing people who live outside the city. Sorry, all you folks from Fitchburg. And it's insistent that if you're going to make a commitment to developing Madison plans and spending Madison money, you have to have a residency in the city of Madison. That's what's important here. And I'd like to join with you for 4 more years in doing this. Thank you.